Damn you, Donzo. Itachi cursed under his breath as he knelt atop a streetlight overlooking the Uchiha district. His blood-red eyes stared coldly at the houses beneath him. One way or another, I hope you end up rotting in hell for forcing me to do this. If you didn't kill Shisui, none of this would have to happen. Itachi stood up, his figure pitch black from the shine of the moon behind him. All that was visible was his Sharingan, the three tomos spinning so slowly that anyone would think they were seeing things. Let the massacre begin, the mysterious voice said behind him. Itachi turned his gaze to the masked man, who only went by Madara. Of course, Itachi knew better than to trust the man. The only reason he was here was because he was willing to carry a part of the burden Itachi had been forced to take on. Make certain they die painlessly, Itachi replied blankly. Of course, Madara responded. I will leave you to tend to your own family. Once my job is finished, I will meet you at the location 2 days from now, and then you will join the Akatsuki, I know. The masked man nodded, vanishing from view in a display of speed. Itachi took one last look at his home before he too descended upon his clan. The first house went down easily, holding an elderly couple who were already nearing death. A single stab to the heart and they were dead. The next house he went to owned a dog, which he silently dispatched before walking into the adult's room. The father had fallen asleep at his desk, with the mother holding an infant in her arms on the bed. The baby was gone in seconds, the mother a moment later. The father's eyes snapped open, only to see the flash of a sword before his head fell to the floor. The masked Madara finished killing the single woman across the street from his last victims. He looked through the window to see blood splatter against the wall in the other house. He turned to see a boy with tired eyes stumble into the room where his parents lay dead. His eyes were clouded, so he did not see the fatal blow coming before it was too late. He flashed away to the next building, appearing in the middle of 5 men who were up late, drinking. In a swift, single circular motion, their heads fell to the ground. The woman in the other room heard the noise, so one of them went to check on the men, met with a kunai to the heart. The remaining women were met with similar fates. Itachi watched as the man attempted to stab him with a kunai after he had killed his wife and kids. Itachi blocked the strike with his Anbu arm guards, then pushed the man's blade into his own heart, killing him upon impact. He jumped out the window into the 3-story apartment next door. He made his way to the top, throwing shuriken through the wooden doors, making contact at the perfect position to slit their throats. After making his way down to the lowest floor, he was greeted by 3 men, all their Sharingans open, ready to kill the intruder. The Uchiha prodigy opened his eyes to reveal their blood-red aura, making his opponents freeze, killing them on the spot from his genjutsu. The next 3 houses were still awake, meaning he had to deal with the screams each of them created. 2 slashes later, and the first house was down. The second house opened its window, only to receive a shuriken in the forehead. He rushed over to the 3rd building, blocking a sword slash with his right arm, and destroying them with his left. He swung his sword, making the blood splatter on the ground. From atop a light post, he could see Madara with blood covering half of his mask. He blinked slowly as the man continued, eliminating Uchiha left, right, and center. Not a single scream escaping his victim's lips. Itachi held back the tears as he moved on as well. The door swung open, the man stepping out to have his head chopped cleanly off. the woman behind him staring with frightened eyes. Itachi glanced at her before moving on. She dropped dead on the spot. He repeated the procedure for the next two families before jumping high into the air, landing on the roof of a widow and her 4 children. He swiftly created a hole in the ceiling and threw 5 kunai, each hitting their mark. He looked down to the road, seeing a woman walking alone with a bag clutched in her arms. He flashed behind her, slashing her in the back, blood soaking into the dirt. Off in the distance, he saw a shadow of a figure hidden behind a tree. One shuriken flew towards him, tying the figure to the tree with wire. Madara yanked on the wire, making it cut into the figure's flesh, ripping his body apart. Itachi looked up at the masked man who threw the projectile. The prodigy stared at him before moving on. Madara jumped into the next house, slicing his prey open, their guts spilling out onto the floor. He hopped out the window and hurled himself into the room below, sending the man who once stood there into the wall, impact knocking him out. The other man in the room grabbed his sword, aiming for the masked man's chest. One punch was all the masked man needed to kill him, the sword falling into his grasp. He used it to stab the unconscious man who was against the wall. He walked out, making sure to shatter the blade before leaving. Itachi dodged 2 shuriken before casting a genjutsu on his victims, making them fall to the ground. Caught a 3rd projectile before hurling it into the house across the road where another of his people hid. He turned back to punch one of his peers in the gut, eliminating him with ease. He turned once again to see the dead body of the man he threw the 3rd shuriken at. He forced his throat closed to keep his last meal with his family from cascading out of his mouth. Finally, Itachi came to the house he was dreading the most besides his own family. Beyond the door was the closest person he had besides Shisui, the girl that made him want to do anything he could to keep her safe. And yet here he was, intending to end her life before it properly began. He opened the door to see Izumi sitting in a chair, looking out the window at the full moon. She looked so innocent, as if her eyes were not tarnished with the curse the Sharingan brought. Even if her red eyes were active, they would still appear beautiful. He walked silently behind her, his fingers curled into fists. His palms were starting to bleed from his nails digging into his own flesh. Is it time, Itachi? Yes. Is there truly no other way? The only other option was killed by Danzo days ago. Shisui? Yes. I'm sorry. Stop doing that. It only makes it worse. Itachi spat out unintentionally. Stop doing what? Izumi asked. Stop making me fall for you. This is already hard enough. Okay, I'll stop. Just let me say one more thing before I move on to the next life. Please, make it quick, the boy said. I love you, Itachi. And I love you, Izumi. Once her last words were spoken, she closed her eyes, expecting to see the faces of her mother and father in the next life soon after. She opened them again, witnessing something she had never expected. Her life flashed before her eyes, but not the life she had lived. In this life, she became a Chunin, retired from duty, and married Itachi. They grew old together and watched their children do the same. At the end, she and Itachi laid side by side, holding each other's hand as they closed their eyes for the last time. "I love you, Izumi," Itachi's low voice rang out. "Thank you, Itachi. I love you too." Izumi's body grew limp as Itachi's eyes reverted from their Mangekyo pattern back to their normal state. "Tsukuyomi, fascinating technique," Madara declared as he appeared beside the youth. "We are almost finished. All that is left is one more house with the last of the elders. I will take care of them. You go to your family." "Just tell me one thing before you go, Madara," Itachi said coldly. "Do you plan to visit your tomb before you leave the village?" "You know there is no body there. Besides, it is heavily guarded. I have no need to go there." "I meant your real grave, Obito Uchiha," Itachi replied with a neutral expression. The masked man was silent. "How long have you known?" "You are the only Uchiha we have ever failed to retrieve the corpse of, and I found it hard to believe that you were actually Madara. You truly are a prodigy, Itachi Uchiha. But to answer your question, no, I will not be visiting my grave. I no longer deserve the privilege to go to the cemetery, and there is only one who is allowed to go to my tombstone." "Kashi, right?" Obito nodded. "Perhaps I will end up there in the future, though I have no intention of that. But if it does come to pass, I would prefer it if you were the one to put me there." "Consider it done," Itachi said, his eyes boring into the masked man's own visible Sharingan. Obito vanished from his vision. Itachi looked down to Izumi's lifeless body, still beautiful even in death. If only that life he had shown her had been real, they would have been able to be happy together. But now that possibility was gone. He gently placed Izumi down on the wood floor, giving her a soft kiss on the forehead. Itachi took a deep breath before dashing towards his home. He silently entered through his bedroom window, slowly making his way towards the two humans inside the largest room. He flashed behind them with his blade raised high. His mother and father had their eyes closed. "It is time to end this, Itachi," his father Fugaku said abruptly. "I knew we would end up on opposite sides of this battle. You were always loyal to the village. You intended to destroy the peace this village had," Itachi said. "Regardless of your reasons, I cannot allow that, even if it means your death." "We understand, my son," his mother said, tears rolling down her cheek. "Itachi, just promise me this. Take care of Sasuke," Fugaku asked, the final request of his life. Itachi froze in place, the tears finally breaking through. "I will." Fugaku let a faint smile appear on his face. "Do not fear. This is the path you have chosen. Compared to you, our pain will be over in an instant. Even if our philosophies differ, I am proud of you. You truly are a kind child." With his last words, Fugaku readied himself for the end. His wife sat beside him, a faint smile on her face as well. They were both ready to die. "This is the only gift I can give you two now," Itachi whispered. "I will never forget what we had here in this house. Now, Tsukuyomi." The name of his ultimate genjutsu was lost due to the sound of Itachi's blade cutting through his parents' bodies. As they fell to the floor, they both experienced the same life he had created for Izumi. A life without pain and misery. An amazing sight. The family all sitting together around a table, smiling. Genjutsu finished its work as the Uchiha's eyes reverted to normal once again. He steeled himself as his little brother, Sasuke, peeked through the door, seeing his older brother standing above his dead parents. From then on, everything became a blur. Every moment of his remaining life was nothing more than a blur to him. He went on reliving that night each day he walked the earth. And when it came for his time to be over, he was able to see the face of his little brother clear as day. They held hatred, just as he had wanted. Now, Sasuke would have the power to make sure Obito ended up in that grave built for him so long ago, exactly where Itachi said he would place him. As his eyes closed for the last time, he only had one regret: that he would not be able to see Sasuke grow up, surrounded by the people who cared about him. He truly hoped that Naruto would make sure that future came to pass. That blonde was always a strange one. Itachi died with a smile on his face. In the next life, he hoped to see his parents and Izumi again, and for Sasuke to join them after living a long life, preferably with a wife of his own in tow. Yes, a family reunion he would give anything for.